Well, good afternoon, everybody, today, and I'm pleased and honored to be asked to speak today. I will be announcing one of our keynote speakers in a moment. I'll give you just a couple minutes first to give you a little background about myself. I'm a managing director and trader and head of marketing in the municipal bond department at Bank of America Merrill Lynch in New York. I've worked in financial services primarily at this firm for many years. This is and was a male-dominated industry for a long time, but I'm happy to say that recent hires now in the division I'm in is over 40% women. So women are increasingly hired in this industry and increasingly hired because the value is proven on hire after hire, how important it is to have women in the workplace. Our clients, so many are women also, so it's a good matchup. And in all the years that I've worked, and especially now in the later years, I realize more than ever, there's so much more to learn. I'm learning all the time and asking questions all the time. Questions such as, how do we coach the next generation of women? You're all here today because you're good at what you do. You've influenced the workplace, you've influenced government, and you've influenced society. Now is the time to develop the next generation of leaders, and for all of us to transition from leaders to leader coaches. We must inspire the next generation of women to know that anything is attainable. One thing we've learned from this recent election is don't assume anything. Dig into the details, form your own opinion, and make your own path, and coach others to do the same. Now I'd have the pleasure of introducing our first keynote speaker, Susan Zirinsky. Ms. Zirinsky's work and programs have earned virtually every major journalism award, including multiple Emmy Awards, a George Foster Peabody Award, the Edward R. Murrow Award for Excellence, the Christopher Award, the Writers Guild of America Award, and the Alfred I. DuPont Columbia University Award. And in 2013, she was presented the Lifetime Achievement Award by the New York Festival's International Television and Film Awards. Susan Zirinsky is a legend and driving force in the broadcast news industry. Now let's take a few minutes to watch the following video highlights of Susan's career.
Her first big break came when she was covering Jimmy Carter, the day he collapsed jogging near Camp David.
CBS News producer Susan Zirinsky, who was running behind the president, tells what happened.
My first sight was the president being supported by what looked like Secret Service runners under his arms. You know, he looked shaky, he was very white.
Down on the convention floor, the working conditions are even closer. So you might not notice a 5-foot, 1.5-inch producer, but her bosses at CBS and 60 Minutes do. In fact, correspondent Ed Bradley specifically requested that Susan Zirinsky help him organize information and track down interviews.
correspondent Bob McEwen, who was the first to report live from the front lines of the ground war last night, is now inside Kuwait.
We came through following the Allied convoy overnight in the dark.
この大プロジェクトを日本で指揮する人、スーザン・ジリンスキーさんです。
Well, why can't we describe it right here? What makes you so tough? Fear, I think, is my explanation. I'm always frightened that something will go wrong. Yeah? So if I'm there longer, I can avoid problems. What this trip really does for CBS is it gives CBS a chance to really thoroughly explore the relationship between the United States and Japan.
Director James Brooks wanted to see Z in action,
My tab.
wanted inspiration for the main character of broadcast news.
What? No, you missed him. We only have 10 minutes left. How can you talk to me about parking problems? No, not you'll try. You'll do it. Do it, or I'll fry your fat ass, Estelle. Goodbye.
I had no idea she was this good.
And guess what James Brooks found out?
I would come onto my set, and she was totally in control of it.
Well, I started out like that, and I moved to that.
Your shoulder is too far in.
She was having things built. She was having things torn down.
You can lean in slightly, but you don't want to ever be as exaggerated as you were.
This was an extraordinary year for all of us. In December, my friends Graydon Carter and Jim Wyatt and Ben Silverman brought 3 extraordinary young men, and they presented us with about 10 minutes of extraordinary footage from inside the buildings at the World Trade Center. We were able to unite them with Susan Zirinsky and make what I feel is one of the things that I'm most proud of in my entire career.
Hi, I'm Connie Chung. We're about to see eye to eye.
That's the way it is. That's the way it is. And that's the way it is.
It is the biggest night in fashion.
Fashion's night out.
Tonight, David Letterman, A Life on Television.
Have you ever killed someone? The 12 living directors of the CIA.
Let me bare my soul just a little bit more.
Terrorism. What are the rules for the CIA spy masters?
I would bring back waterboarding. He better bring his own bucket.
The spy masters.
In this trial, you are particularly instructed not to view the CBS television program 48 hours during this trial at all.
Crime. Punishment. Redemption. 48 hours, Saturdays.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really thrilled to be here. The size of the room's a little bigger than Noriko Kelly had actually told me about. She texted me as I was getting off the plane, so there was no going back. I am really thrilled to be here among you this afternoon, and we're living in unusual times, to say the least. And as I like to say, before we get to me, I want to just talk for a second about the elephant in the room, and that's the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States. As a journalist, I can only go so far in public, but I can say this: 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump. What lies ahead for all of us, especially those of you sitting in this room? We have to hold firm. Women have been carrying the heavy weight of fighting sexism for a very long time. But what's especially clear right now is that little changes if men don't change. In fact, we need men to step in and work on one another. Now is the time for us not to crawl back and be bemoaning. Now is the time to get loud and stay loud. And this is a group that can do it. One other thing, and then I'll kind of move on. I was very struck, it was about 2 years ago, and I was actually speaking to a group of women in digital. And the night before I spoke, Microsoft's CEO, Mr. Nadella, he was at a women's tech conference, and he said, this is like unfathomable, quote, "Instead of asking for a raise among the women, have faith that the system will give you the right raise." I kid you not. Now, he did backtrack when the tsunami of criticism came forth, but really? This is ahead of Microsoft? Look, the broadcast that I executive produced, 48 Hours, as you saw, opens up with a laser cutting through with the words, "Real stories, real people, real life drama." You know it, I know it. Life is real life drama. It's messy. It comes with problems and mistakes and endings where the guy doesn't always get the girl. But actually on our show, one or both of them end up dead and we get crime scene photos to go with them. How do we measure success today? Look, there's no MapQuest, there's no Waze or Google Map to give us directions. But what makes any of us feel successful? I am proud, as the lovely introduction was, that we've won multiple prestigious awards, Columbia University and Excellence in Journalism and all of that. And every so often, you kind of get a little cocky, just for a minute. And then suddenly something happens and it puts you right back in your little place. We received an Emmy for our primetime show on the Boston bombing, the marathon bombing, Caught. I was exceedingly proud. And I got up to accept the award, and I'm thinking, you know what? Why don't I just stop being so nervous all the time? Look, our whole team is rewarded for our work. And then a picture that occurred when I accepted the award went viral, and I went right back in my tiny little box. I want to call for the picture for a second. Okay? Next time I'll bring my own Apple box, or I will not lie that I'm not really 5'1", I'm really just barely 5 feet. Success really means how well you cope with the things that happen as you take your journeys in all different walks of life. Real success, to me, is about not giving up when the worst happens and when you're in charge. Make no mistake about it, the worst things are your fault. Many people have said to me, CBS, 48 Hours, they're not your family. You just work with them. But I have a very different philosophy. They are my family. They're my family, and they know what life's like all about. I hope nobody's offended, but shit happens. Tomorrow's another day, and everyone goes on because that's real life. And those faces that you see and spend so many hours with when you walk through the door, they're your family, and you have to be there for them and defend them, and that's part of my family. My day job is 48 Hours, and we've been on the air 29 seasons. I haven't been there for all of it. But 48 Hours is the third longest running show in prime time. 60 minutes. And let's just say another show on another network with a couple of numbers in front of it. We'll let that go, and 48 Hours. We do feel the impact of our reporting, as the film said, you know, helping people get out of jail for wrongful convictions and closing cold cases. This has impact. This is exactly what we should be doing, and it makes me very proud. The range of programming I get to do is, topic of this conference, daring. I'm not asked to do it, I push to do it. Noriko Kelly will tell you that. She's the person I call on the phone to push to. I do it because pushing the creative envelope is good for us. It's good for my staff, it's good for me, it's good for staying in the game, it's just good for the future. We've been honored to produce some of the most memorable documentary specials. You saw snips of video of a recent documentary we produced on the CIA. It was extraordinary to get the 12 living directors. I was really afraid of doing this because I felt that they would be apologists for the CIA policy that had come under such criticism. But they dealt with everything, waterboarding, killing an American terrorist, and they really questioned the role of the future of the CIA. Should it be a killing machine? It was a remarkable documentary. I felt exceedingly proud of it and presented a deep philosophical divide in the CIA that exists today. You saw a little snip of it, but it's my favorite quote in the whole thing, because Donald Trump is talking about bringing back waterboarding, and as Michael Hayden said, former director, he's going to have to bring his own bucket. Good luck with that. The specials that have had impact on me, everything from a Mandela special to, you saw the Ted Kennedy one, and John F. Kennedy at 50 years, and the films that you saw up there, you know, they change you as a person. They change how you see the world. I do dare to do them. I don't always think they succeed in terms of a rating, but that they succeed in a message that we want to convey. And so sometimes you have to dare to take the chance in order to do what's right. I'm driven to do them. There are lighter moments. Obviously, you saw the Letterman. And the Letterman thing was a little funny because when we were asked to do it really at the last minute, I asked the executive, I said, are you sure you want me in 48 hours to produce it? And the executive will go nameless. And he said, well, what are you talking about? And I said, well, remember that little issue of the producer who blackmailed David Letterman because David Letterman was having a little thing with his girlfriend, who was his girlfriend? Well, he worked for 48 hours. I said, it might be a little awkward. And they said, awkward, but let's do it anyway. So we did produce it. Success for me is about staying in the game. It's the holy grail. Every day you strive to do something memorable. I push and I dare to produce the things that are out of our normal range. Do I dare do an Elvis by the Presley documentaries or a Grammy special or a Vanity Fair on the Oscars, their Oscar 20th anniversary of their big party? It's daring, it's scary, but I keep pushing. One thing I don't put on my resume actually is a 6-part reality series we did on Britney Spears. That was a favor to my boss, Leslie Moonves. Well, it won't go further than that. But I called the series Chaotic, which was a piece of music that she had that hadn't been published. I didn't realize how close to the truth that would be when we produced that. That's left off my CV. Success for me personally is a very tough question right now. I will share something at the back end that really makes success much more difficult for me right now. And I'm not sure I'll ever get past it, but I will work at it. There are some key elements that will make everybody stay in the room to know what I'm talking about. There's some key elements that I live by, and I'll tell you what they are, and I'll tell you what I get from them specifically. I am scared every single day. What do I get from it? Fear for me has been the most powerful, motivating factor in my life and my career. 2, I get up earlier and stay up later than any human being I know. What do I get? I feel like I never miss anything. And in the world of balancing family and job, it's Darwinian. It's how I survive. 3, you can't always lean in. My theory, lean sideways. You have to accept you cannot have it all. I'm sorry. What do I get? Run over by Sheryl Sandberg. 4, and finally, really important, no is hello. No is the beginning of any conversation. What do I get? Raw energy from negativity. It's like the Iron Man challenge for me. And I believe if I work hard enough and I can inspire the people that are working with me, I can turn that no into a yes. I have worked my entire life at CBS News. I can't actually tell you how many years because it's unfathomable to me. More than 20, less than 50. You see, when you're short, you actually appear younger. This is good. This is very good for Noriko and me. Seriously, I was 19 years old and I got a part-time job at the CBS Washington Bureau while I was in college. I was so low on the food chain, I don't even think my name was on the phone list. I did a lot of night duty, especially Friday and Saturday nights. I didn't date a lot, so it actually gave me a place to go. But it was during Watergate, a very exciting time. And if any of you in this room do not know what that is, I think you should just get up and go now. Just kidding. I know many of you sitting here were not alive, which makes me want to poke a pen through my eye, but I digress. It was an amazing time in journalism. You know, we held the Nixon White House accountable for dirty tricks during the campaign for president. It was a scandal that would ultimately bring down a presidency and all his men. And me, I was chasing the Attorney General of the United States, John Mitchell, in the back of alleys of the Jefferson Hotel, secretly meeting with some Cubans for a payoff. I was going to every garage in the Washington, Virginia, Maryland area because my assignment editor really believed that the main source for the famous reporters Woodward and Bernstein of the Washington Post was dumping information every Saturday night to them for their big Sunday paper. Let me tell you, I never ran into Deep Throat. I never ran into Woodward and Bernstein, but it was really kind of cool. And I, after my excursions, go back to my dorm room, I might add, dorm room, where I'd be wanting to regale them of my stakeout stories, and my multiple roommates would be puking from their Saturday night excursions, but I was talking politics. I like to say I kind of found my lover. It was the greatest seduction of all time. I absolutely, positively knew what I wanted to do with my life. I had wanted to be a film director, but journalism was explosive. And television journalism had it all. It had editorial value, it had impact, it had images, and it had filmmaking. Original reporting. My affair with CBS was better than anyone I could find on Tinder, eHarmony, or my personal favorite, Christian Mingle. When I think of the journey I've taken in my career and the people I follow and still follow and who are very successful, Scott Pelley, Charlie Rose, Bob Schieffer, Leslie Stahl, and some of the legacies of Mike Wallace and Ed Bradley, my own 48 Hours, Erin Moriarty and Peter Van Sant, there is a common thread, and that is we look at the world with almost a childlike curiosity. We have this insatiable desire to know what's going on, to find out the truth and share something else. I want to share something else. We all have this overwhelming passion for what we do. It's energizing. Look, there are obstacles for any and every generation. We thought we were past the issues of being a woman before the campaign turned it into a front burner issue. Go figure. When I started out being a woman, for so many, it seemed to be a major roadblock. Thank you, Mr. Trump and Billy Bush, for continuing that roadblock. But when I first got to the Washington Bureau, and I was a sophomore in college, I never thought twice about being a woman until I was asked to deliver an envelope to Leslie Stahl's desk. She was a young reporter breaking stories about Watergate every day, a top reporter. I hope you got to see her 60 Minutes interview with Trump last Sunday in the Family. It was dynamic. But that one day, that envelope in hand, I came face to face with something absurd. I couldn't find her office, because you know what? She didn't have an office. She had a desk, and not just a desk. It was the flippin' tiniest desk I had ever seen in a back hallway. I sort of felt like Alice in Wonderland, and I had fallen through the rabbit hole. That was her desk. And I thought, oh my God, She's not considered a full player. She's not a member of the team. And I now realize that she's asked to turn over all her information in that day to her male colleagues. I would say the iconic Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes has made it 10 times over and has the staying power of Mount Rushmore. But yes, there are still battles ahead. My job throughout my career, part-time desk assistant, secretary, researcher, associate producer, evening news producer, White House producer, and up through the ranks have been so rich, there isn't a single experience that I had that wasn't worth it. There's never been a single job I thought was a waste. Every job, every boss, every colleague that I have worked with gave me something that I took with me, even when I got fired. Really, I was fired as the first senior woman broadcast producer on the evening news by an executive producer, a guy who didn't like me because, wait for it, I had never used cocaine. And he told me that he couldn't relate to me. Seriously. Seriously. Oh, yes, there was one other reason. I didn't dress down on Fridays. It made him crazy. I don't know if you notice, I'm short and jeans look kind of silly on me, so just saying. So we didn't click. But I even learned a lot from that man. Euphemism for asshole. Eventually, he got fired from CBS and had a wide array of jobs. Now he is a consultant, another euphemism for loser. Up until about 6 months ago, I actually had his desk, and once a day, I would spit on it. And even after all these years, I just found it incredibly satisfying. It was amazing. Look, every experience you have, I don't care what your job is, touches you. It impacts how you do your job. It impacts, for me, how I report a story. I was the White House producer for about 12 years, and Jimmy Carter was the first real president that I covered full-time, and 2 terms of Ronald Reagan. Politics aside, I really preferred Reagan's Santa Barbara than Jimmy Carter's dusty Plains, Georgia, just saying. One Christmas trip to Plains, Georgia, we had gone in ahead of the president to kind of set up, and it was a sleepy holiday weekend, and I'm driving my camera crew crazy of, like, how are we going to get on the air? And it was before the age of advanced cell phones. We thought we were really cool because we had these walkie-talkies with little patches on them that were actual phones as a walkie-talkie way before. Obviously, it was Jimmy Carter. And my cameraman crackles into the walkie-talkie and he says, wow, you must have a lot of friends. What, you know, and I crackled back. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, the sign on the highway. We pulled into the Best Western outside of Plains, Georgia, and there on the highway it was one of those giant marquee signs for the Best Western in Plains, Georgia, and it said, like, welcome Susan Zirinsky, CBS News White House producer. Curious, I went in and I said to the manager, wow, that's kind of fun. Like, what'd you do that for? And he said to me, well, you're the first Jew we've ever had here for Christmas, so we really thought we wanted you to feel welcome. And I said, wow, I'm proud. Really proud. So every experience leaves their mark. I want to go back to one of the key tenets in my life, which has been part of my life since I walked through the doors at CBS, and that's every day living on the edge of fear. It is really my most powerful life force. It empowers me. It makes me better prepared for my job. It keeps me thinking about the what if. It pushes me creatively, and it has definitely led me places. I have even given my fear a name. I call it unspecified dread. There's something odd about having fear as a motivator. It's like a drug. The more fearful I am, the more I crave it. Maybe that's the point. If there wasn't a war zone that I didn't volunteer for, even ones you may not remember, the war on the Falklands between Argentina and Britain, the U.S. invasion of Panama to get Noriega, the first Gulf War. I wasn't married yet. I was together, but I wasn't married. But what was critical to me was to be a player. Everyone could get married and have a child, but I wanted to be seen as the person who would go everywhere, however dangerous, for as long as needed. No one needed to know how scared shitless I was. Even today, when a crisis breaks, the Paris terror attacks, the Dallas shootings, Newtown, the Boston Marathon bombing, I do feel unbearable fear when a story breaks like that, unspecified dread. The story is so important. If I'm taking it on, will I get it right? Will we have impact? How do I touch people? I push hard to do primetime specials because I know that the creative talent within my own organization of 48 will give context and perspective to a breaking story. I'm not alone. I'm surrounded by powerful journalists. I want you to be haunted by specials we do about events that have great impact on the world. Then we will have succeeded. But the truth is, I have learned to harness my fear, to embrace it, and let it fuel my creativity. I remembered when I realized that fear teaches you to think on your feet. I was sitting at my desk as a senior producer in Washington, and the bureau chief comes running to my desk, and he says, "Do you have your passport?" I said, "Sure, I always have my passport." "Do you have a run bag?" Meaning a bag that's packed that you can go. I said, "Yeah." He said, "You need to be at Andrews Air Force Base in 1 hour, get on the plane with Secretary of State George Shultz, under Bush 1. He was going to 5 countries on a Mideast peace mission with a stop in Moscow. Oh my God, I panicked, no preparation. You'll pick up correspondence along the way. You can file for radio. The State Department correspondent had gotten sick, my luck. I went to the bathroom, puked, and headed to Andrews Air Force Base. Luckily, I didn't get the ready bag wet. I always keep it close to that area in the bathroom, but 3 days worth of clothes, I was good to go. On the plane, 5 reporters and myself, Secretary of State, would wander back, talk to us on the record, off the record. So close to history. One funny note, when it was time to go to Moscow, we were in Helsinki. Weather was terrible, and the State Department decided they were going to train 22 hours from Helsinki to Moscow because the planes couldn't fly. No food. What does a Jewish producer do? They go out and they buy food. I went out with the New York Times reporter. We bought food, a lot of food, because it was going to be a long ride and no food would be on the train. Salami, cheese, bread, you name it, we had it. I brought enough food that I could feed the whole city of Helsinki. We left, and somewhere in the middle of the night, we start making sandwiches for everybody in the press train. And sure enough, who wanders back but Secretary of State George Shultz. So I looked at him, I said, "Do you want a sandwich, Secretary?" He said, "That would be great." We make him a salami and cheese sandwich. He says, "Thanks much," goes away. We're laughing. But what was funnier was 20 minutes later, he comes back, he goes, "That was delicious. Can you make one for my wife?" I wasn't so scared anymore. I will often say that fear does test you and make you take some risks sometimes. I think it's the rush of adrenaline. In Dhahran, actually, it was during the first Gulf War, the Allied forces were just poised to take back Kuwait. And I had 10 minutes to make a decision. It was the middle of the night. If I moved Dan Rather and enough equipment and myself from Dhahran into Kuwait so that we could broadcast from there the next evening for evening news. I couldn't wake anybody up. I didn't have enough time, and so I did it. I said, let's do it. And so in the middle of the night, we're packing up, and I hope no one is offended by my language so far and about to be. And Dan Rather takes one look at me, and he says, "I certainly hope you know what the fuck you're doing." And I said, "Me too." So with enough equipment, we were on our way, but here was the odd part. The Iraqis had blown up oil fields. So it's in the middle of the day, but it's pitch black because all the oil wells are burning out of control. A male reporter from the BBC was driving my Jeep because women can't drive in Saudi Arabia. We had become, unfortunately, separated from the Saudi military convoy. We walked 24 miles into Kuwait because we couldn't see. We took turns with a flashlight. The smell of burning bodies was to this day one of the most horrific things I'd ever smelled. And there were landmines, so we had literally a penlight flashlight walking up the road. Eventually, we got into Kuwait, and literally, we were close to the beach, and I saw a bright light in the distance. If you've lost your anchor man, A, that's not a particularly good career move, and B, look for a light. You may not have found heaven, but you're damn sure to find an anchor man ready to go on the air. True that. That night, we anchored from a restaurant called Shrimpies. The Iraqis had left it just hours before. It was pretty scary, pretty exciting. But for me, fear was taking a chance. Today, our reporters there, Liz Palmer and Holly Williams, covering terrorism in the raging Middle East, they seem fearless. I admire them. I stand in awe of their bravery. When I was covering wars, you kind of knew who the enemy was. Now, a child could come strapped with a suicide bomb and you don't know. It's an unimaginable position to be in that part of the world. And I often wonder if they're as fearful as I used to be. Probably should be more. Fear of getting older is what drives me to embrace every technical gadget I can get my hands on. There isn't a social platform that I don't love participating in. There's a fabulous New Yorker cartoon that I adore, I have actually, and it's two dogs, and one is sitting at a desk on a computer and the other's on the floor next to him. And one dog says to the other, you know, when you're online, no one knows you're a dog. Well, on social, no one knows how old I am. Embracing the digital world and learning every new platform in the universe is my job. Mark well, I will not be left behind. There's that word again. Fear is morphed into an excitement. Get over asking someone younger, less experienced in life and in your job, advice on social media. I know one thing. I'm not fearful about asking, how the F do you do that? And what the hell can I download off this app? Just do it. If you told me 5 years ago that I would be begging people to put my television specials and program on a screen that's 2 inches by 2 inches, I would have asked you to share the crack with me because I need a lift. Seriously. Every Saturday night now, when 48 Hours is on television or I'm on with a special, the correspondent and I are on Facebook and Twitter, live chatting through the entire show. I even have a relationship with one tweeter named Rex the dog, and if Rex isn't there, I actually reach out and I say, Rex, where are you? It's 10 o'clock. I'm posting on Instagram and Facebook, and my daughter says to me, could you use another name? I said, okay. I'm fighting to stay in the game, and not just stay, but succeed. I've disappeared when I'm not home, which isn't a lot on Saturday nights, when I've been asked to go out to dinner. I say, I'm not sick, although maybe I am. I'll be away for about 45, 50 minutes. I go into the bathroom with my laptop, and I tweet from the bathroom for the entire show. So I may not be physically sick, I'm just mentally sick. A few years back, I started a crime blog with CBS News in the digital space about law and justice. It's called crimesider.com. I'm not supposed to say this out loud, so nobody quote me, but it gets 10 times the amount of clicks that 60 Minutes Over Time does. However, we're crime, they're 60 Minutes, so they get $1 million Viagra deal. Me, I get good wishes. There may be palpable fear in the television news industry, but it is curious that the 3 network evening news broadcasts still attract 7 to 10 viewers a week. Check out the numbers for Netflix or Amazon or cable. I dare say we're still in the ball game. And oddly as it is, CBS News has growing numbers. CBS This Morning is the only show that is actually growing numbers and audience. It's awesome, seriously. Now listen, television news will continue to exist. It will continue, servicing those that are close to death, just kidding, but online, in every platform. Journalism is alive and well, and the most important truth is democracy depends on it. The seismic shifts in our industry, the proliferation of news has given the consumer, you guys, so many more choices from with to gather information. But there is a catch, and this is a fear. How it's much harder to break through the cacophony of voices to actually have a unique voice, one that will break through. This is our challenge. This can keep you up at night. Fear of staying relevant. Sheer to 5 minutes, forget that. Good luck with that. Let's go personal for a moment. I won't ask for questions, but I'm going to be longer than 5 minutes. When I walk into a meeting or come to speak to a group like you, I know I'm not the smartest person in the room. That's a female thing. But I believe those who succeed are the ones that are not afraid to embrace other people's ideas. Those who succeed know when to push back. Katie Couric and I were doing a special soon after she got there with President Bush. Aides come running in the room. They were briefing us on that the White House was going to admit that the CIA had secret prisons all over the world. It's a big story. President's coming, they said. Don't stop. You must give us the information. Stop the president. I was the White House producer. I knew you could do those things. Katie Couric kicks me under the table. The briefers stayed. We got briefed. We did a phenomenal interview, and it made news for days. Know when to push back. Know when to push back. I want to talk about the no is hello moment for me. When Diane Sawyer was at CBS, we were doing a documentary on Russia, and the centerpiece was an interview with Boris Yeltsin. He was the Moscow party chief. It was a really important interview. But let me tell you, 2 hours in the Kremlin, I was nowhere. And then suddenly I remember, I go to my backpack at the end of a room that's like 2 football stadiums, and I pull out a glossy picture of Diane Sawyer. I knew Yeltsin had a little lust in his heart. And I go and I slam the picture in front of him, and I said, "This is who will be doing your interview." He looks up, his ears flush red, and he says, "Конечно," means certainly, "Da," interview arranged. I wish I had thought of that 2 hours before. No matter what your job, keep your moral compass intact. Dealing with the devil will never work. The price she's asking, yes, it's she, will always be too high. We had done a story on a serial killer, and there was a new set of circumstances and a new murder that they were being accused of, so I called. And the lawyer said, "I'm going to have his agent get back to you." That's right, the serial killer had an agent. And they said to me, "How much would you be willing to pay because the serial killer has become an artist in prison?" He said, "Your colleagues at other networks are offering north of 20 grand. I said, "I'm walking." Just saying. I'm skipping some stuff, so you'll be happy. We were competing with another news magazine on a story about a mother who had died at the hands of an ex-husband, and the daughters were trying to seek justice. Oftentimes we compensate for lost wages if you do an interview with us. It's all legal, social numbers, W-9s, the whole 9 yards, for all you tax accountants in here. But the woman said, "Well, in addition to compensating me, I need you to compensate my 25 employees." And I thought, what? I said, "Are you curing cancer?" And she said, "Well, no." She was from Colorado. "Actually, I sell pot." And I said, "I think we're losing sight of justice for your mom here." They went to Dateline, and I said, "Bye-bye." I had to make a life or death decision during the Tiananmen Square massacre in China. Thousands of students were protesting. They had taken over the square where the government buildings were. They wanted freedom just to decide what they did in their lives. It didn't seem like a big issue, but it certainly was for China. The military attacked the kids in the square. There were many, many deaths. In the chaos and the weeks that followed, a professor called me, and he wanted to bring over a dissident who had been very helpful when we were covering the story, named Feng Lizhe. And they came to the CBS office. Martial law had been declared in China, and the professor was trying to convince the Americans to take in Feng Lizhe and give him asylum. The Chinese were convinced this was the instigator of all of the social movement and the upheaval among the kids. I was asked to hide Feng Lizhe, and I did. We had a lot of offices in the hotel we were staying at, and that 2 days later, I get a call from Leslie Stahl, then at the White House, and she said, "We hear that Feng Lizhe has been arrested." And I said, "Let me check." I waited 10 minutes. I called her back, and I said, "I have absolute source material. He has not been arrested." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Absolutely." I had just brought him coffee. Just saying. It started to get too dangerous. I called somebody at the embassy who I believe was CIA, but I don't really know. And I called him and I said, in codes, I have this package. I thought the Americans would want it. And he said, "Stop talking in codes." Okay, 1 minute. All right, I'll get there. The guy calls me back on a secure phone, and he says, tell me what it is. I said, I have Feng Lizhe. He said, bring him. He told me a door to bring him, and we brought him to the U.S. Embassy. And literally, he lived there for 2 years before the Americans and the Chinese reached an agreement, and he got asylum. He came to this country, taught at the University of Michigan. Look out for those events that can change your life. I do not regret that. 5 more pages. I'm almost done. Almost done. 5 big type pages. Tell them you want to hear the rest of the speech, right? Okay, no more applause so I can get through this. 9/11 changed me. I trained my whole life, I feel like, to cover that event. I had gone to war all over the world, but this war was happening 35 blocks from my house. As journalists, we shared a sense of guilt that we hadn't seen this coming, that no one really understood the depth and the hatred that people felt towards us. Kind of feels like election night, doesn't it? After 9/11, we were approached by these 3 filmmakers who you saw in the film. They were doing a boy becomes a man story, and they were on a routine gas leak when Jules Naudet, who had been the producer, only his second day shooting, and they heard a buzz. He looked up and he followed this plane. It was the first plane that went into the North Tower. It was the only camera that captured it. They were the only crew inside that tower and in that day. They didn't know they would be witnesses to history and find themselves at the gates of hell. The footage was raw, and when we helped produce this incredible film, honestly, it's one of the proudest moments of my career to be able to show the heroism of that day. 52 million people watched our first documentary. We've done updates over the years. It's a power that will stay with me for the rest of my life. And on the 10-year anniversary, the rookie who they had been following, the boy becomes a man story, said to me, some people go their whole lives and they're not tested. I was tested that day, and so were a lot of people. The strength and courage of some who walk among us is indeed inspiring. There isn't a single one of us that doesn't face challenges in the business. You know what? We say it's not personal. It's personal. I say bullshit to people who say it's not personal. You have to take care of your people. When I got a call that a young man of ours had been beaten almost to death on vacation in St. Martin's, he was beaten because he was gay. I got CBS to get a medevac plane. We got him out of St. Martin's to Miami. Literally, for a year, he couldn't talk, couldn't walk. It was terrible. Last weekend, he was in South Carolina for me, crashing a story, got an incredible get. He's a brilliant field producer for me. You know what? We paid for the plane. There's no looking back. When a senior producer colleague discovered that her 12-year-old son had brain cancer, we took it on like we would take on any CBS project. We researched. We raised $250,000 for Cedars-Sinai to try an injection. For 2 years, she was in and out. I didn't take her off payroll. At 14, that child lost his battle with brain cancer. Do I regret keeping her on payroll when she wasn't really working? Not so much. Let them come after me. After I did the documentary on the CIA, I was called in to tell me that revenues, which was a state secret, were through the floor, and the future of my show was in jeopardy. That was in this past November. I had to make just deep, deep cuts. It was horrific. I'd never been through anything like that. But CBS, I convinced to do buyouts, and they were good to people. Draconian cuts. But oddly enough, now, having come out of it over this year, it's empowering. I can't even explain it. I feel like just the fighter that I am, I can survive. Money's an issue. They didn't want me to do a special on Dallas because of the financial implications. I had to do it. I dared them, and they didn't dare to come back at me afterwards. Having it all, truthfully, I don't think there's enough discussion, honest conversation about the real barriers that exist. Okay, time to share. I have an adopted 20-year-old daughter, Chinese, and in 11th grade, about 4 years ago, she sank into a deep depression. Who I am, where do I fit in? Normal teen angst, we thought. But what do you do when your child, who is Chinese, says she hates being Asian? What do you do when you think you cannot keep your child safe from hurting herself? The world I knew and my husband was turned upside down. I questioned everything I had ever done, every decision about work, the long hours, the fantastic nanny that's still with me, even though she's a second-year student at Cal Arts. I thought I had it all figured out. My husband had commuted from Miami for 7 years, but we had it together, didn't we? I questioned every time I pushed her. Was I wrong? I questioned every moment of my career focus. My daughter did graduate on time, having to complete 2 years in one. It's been a very painful road. She was treated in an amazing program, and she is better. But make no mistake about it, the journey isn't over, not by a long shot. I'm strapped in, because it's like a roller coaster. So success for me is not so much in a straight line. I know this after 4 years. I was doing the best I could, and the unconditional love that I feel is the power of a weapon to fight her demons. I can't lose this battle, and I'm going to be there for her. I have turned down multiple amazing jobs over the last 4 years, and it's the first time I've had to do that kind of a decision because of a personal issue. It's foreign territory for me, but I know it's the only answer. Would my kid have gone through this if I had been a stay-at-home mom? Would she have glided through those teen years? Because I'm somebody who's so fearful that I have to work so hard, more so than normal people? I don't know the answer, but I do know that everyone has the right to decide. I will never again be a woman that looks disdainfully at another woman because she wants to stay home. Will they be denied success when they want to re-enter the workforce? Yes, 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 but maybe that'll change. I'm not sure you can manage to climb up the ladder as fast as men do when you have a family and an active home life. I really believe I became a better person, a better producer, a better executive producer when I did get married and adopted Zoe. I thought I had it all. I don't. But if you haven't figured out, I'm a fighter. And I fought to get where I am, and I fought to stay on top. And no matter what my fears are, I'm fighting for her. I think people don't really know this strength. Just like that rookie firefighter who said people go their whole lives and they're not tested. We're tested. I have one favorite quote, and then I'm done. It's a Martin Luther King quote. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort, but where he stands in the times of challenge. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.